Well, good evening. Welcome to Bedtime Stories with me, Pastor Michelle, and today's Friday, January 22nd. So our woman, we're going to begin hearing about adventurers. So our woman that we're going to hear about is Ada Blackjack. She was an Arctic survivor. She was a shy single mother with a sick kid. She desperately needed a job. 4 geographers and scientists and a cat named Vic were heading off on a grand adventure to the uninhabited Wrangel Island, which was 55 miles off the northeast coast of Siberia. They needed a cook and a seamstress. So Ada was hired. Her son Bennett was too sick for a dangerous journey, so Ada made the heart-wrenching decision to leave him at an orphanage where he could get medical care. Her dream was to make enough money so they could be reunited. The 2-year grand adventure quickly turned into a sad tale of survival. The men had taken enough food to last 6 months, figuring they would hunt, trap, fish, and live off the land for the other 18 months, except none of them were hunters or trappers. At first, the men explored and studied the vegetation, rocks, and wildlife, while Ada stayed behind. They kept journals, collected specimens, and created maps. But then they ran into problems. Arctic storms raged, and they spent days huddled close to the fire. They worried about being attacked by the many polar bears roaming the area. Most of their food supplies had rotted. They were slowly starving. It was time to abandon the expedition. One scientist was too ill to travel, so it was decided that Ada would stay and care for him while the others sought help. Ada collected seagull eggs for meals. She collected roots to eat and found greens that tasted a little like watercress. She didn't know how to trap animals, but learned through trial and error. Ada walked for miles every day to check the traps, too often finding them empty. She hated guns, but taught herself to shoot, although she couldn't practice much for fear of running out of bullets. After a close encounter with a polar bear, she gathered wood and built a tall platform so she could keep an eye on them in all directions. Despite her best efforts, the scientist died. Ada was now alone with only Vic. The cat for company the only thing alive was Vic with her. A typewriter had been left behind, so she wrote about her days. It was almost like having a conversation with someone. It would have been easy to give up, but she was determined to see her son again and just kept going day after day. Then 2 years later, Ada heard a loud rumbling noise. She grabbed her binoculars and stared through the fog. A ship! Rescued at last! Ada's desire to see her son again gave her the courage and willpower to survive. Against all odds, she managed to do both. Well, that's great. Kind of reminds me of the Matt Damon movie, Mars? Mission to Mars? No, that's probably not the name of it. Well, darn it. I can't think of it. But where he gets trapped on Mars or that planet and he has to survive for like 2 years until he's rescued again. I don't know why that hearing about Ada made me think of that movie. Anyway, moving right along, let's hear a story from Disney. And we're going to listen to a story called A Tiny New Friend. And this is from the Disney classic Cinderella. It had been a week since Cinderella's stepmother had forced her to move out of her bedroom and into the attic of the old house. But Cinderella was still not used to her new sleeping quarters. The only other soul around to keep Cinderella company was a skittish little mouse who she had seen scurrying in and out of a hole in the corner. One day at supper time, Cinderella slipped a piece of cheese into her apron pocket. That evening, when her work was finished, Cinderella hurried up to her room and pulled out her sewing basket. She used some scraps of fabric to make a mouse-sized suit of clothing, a red shirt and cap, a tiny orange coat, and 2 brown slippers. Cinderella carried the clothes over to the mouse hole and knelt before it. She pulled the cheese out of her pocket and placed it with the clothes in the palm of her hand. Then she laid her open hand just in front of the mouse hole. "Hello in there," she called. The mouse curiously poked his head out of the hole and sniffed the air. Seeing the cheese, he inched out of the hole and over to Cinderella's hand. He paused and looked up at her. "Go ahead. They're a gift for you." The mouse scampered onto her palm, picked up the cheese and clothes, and hurried back into the mouse hole. Cinderella waited patiently for a few moments, just kneeling in front of the hole. "Well, let me see how they look on you." Timidly, the mouse came out in his new outfit, and Cinderella clapped her hands. "Perfect! Do you like them?" The mouse nodded, then he jumped as if an idea had just occurred to him and scurried back into the mouse hole. Cinderella frowned. Had she frightened him? But her worries vanished when the mouse reappeared along with several other mouse who followed timidly behind him. "More friends!" Cinderella cried. She hurried to get her sewing basket, delighted to have found the warmth of friendship in the cold attic room. So God bless you all, my friends, and stay safe.